You're at another prison, and let's say it doesn't have like a program like this, so therefore you only meet people on the yard. Um, you really don't talk much about like books or education unless you have like a nerd friend or somebody who's like you know into that kind of stuff that you don't really find them much in prison, because everybody's there for trying to make fast money and big money, and or they made a mistake and killed somebody. So you know um, but I saw Dante at the other camp, but I never talked with him. But when I got to Dade CI, I joined that writing exchange, the Exchange for Change program, and started going to class, started writing a little here and there. And then he came from, I don't even think he came from DeSoto, he probably came from another camp. He'd been transferred a lot up and down. Uh, and then we met in the writing classes, and we started developing a little friendship here and there, and I started noticing, man, that this guy can write. This guy here is kind of educated, like, man, for a dude, in the gang, and a leader of the gang. I was like, he's well educated. So I started like investigating, like, man, what does this dude, what does he do? And I realized that, he reads a lot, he studies, takes his time in the room to do these things, So we just started talking and hanging out, and that's how I became a poet, through him. Yeah, I would have never picked up poetry, because that's something that a lot of guys don't do in prison. You don't just write poetry, and you don't share it with other guys, because a lot of them are like, man, I don't want to hear that crap. I don't want to hear that junk. So tell me about robbing. Tell me about stealing. Tell me about making money. Tell me about what am I gonna do when I get out of here and I don't have much money. Who you gonna connect me with out there? Who's got the bricks, man? Who's got the keys? So you can link me together, and that's what they do on the yard. Try to get connections, so when they get out, hey, I start making fast money again, and make up for all these years and all this time I was here in prison. But we're on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
We're on something different. We're like, we're like weird. We're weird now.
How did that? I think that's really interesting, because I mean, you do have to kind of put on an act, kind of be macho, right, when you're inside. But obviously, writing, I mean, with certain exceptions, I think Hemingway is very macho, and maybe there's some others. But writing is not a very macho thing all the time. It's a lot about feelings and stuff like that. Did you feel like you were singled out, or that people looked at you differently when you started doing that? Like you had to protect yourself more? Or?
No, not really, because in prison, if you've been in it for a while, you start getting used to prison life, and you get accustomed to it. So you're not really scared of what somebody might say, or what somebody might criticize you for. And then the more you do time, everything just is easier to go about. Maybe for guys who are just getting their new first year or first few months in prison, they might be scared about joining a class or going to school, because what are the older guys gonna say, or what are the gang gonna say? But a lot of these gang members are in school. A lot of them are trying to get their GED, and a lot of them are trying to get a little bit of education in their life. 15 life sentences, as if we were cats or immortal aliens, like if we lived 1,000 years like Methuselah. They say we are the human race as they erase and extinguish, treating us like useless bars of metal. Disgusting. Stay away from them, because they are rusting in a mental state of corruption. Placed in this 3,000 degree furnace, testing metals at extreme temperatures for decades, melting some to never take form again. 1 out of 1,000 take higher shape, choosing not to conform to incompetent standards, while their pets live a life of grandeur. More concern for a rabid dog. They deny us a vaccine, put parole to sleep indefinitely. Dreams of relief cut off, gangrene limb, never to be bothered with or thought of again. More hope for a plastic bottle cap. We can't be recycled or rehabilitated. Must the powerful mind remain the same? Left captive in a concrete island with high walls of limitation. No seeds, no fertilizer, no soil. Only dry, barren toil. Some crack. Yet buried in these man-made holes, some found liquid gold. The igloo system called just ice keeps us in the cold, like abominable frozen carcasses in meat lockers, freezing our feelings, stiffening our emotions, numbing the warm touch of family bonds, drowning in liquid nitrogen, shattering the bridge of hope, creating a chasm between us and our families left in pieces. The Terminators thought they disposed of us. They couldn't dissolve our strong resolve. Those oxidated bars of metal are now the ones that sharpen iron, grinding us into razor-edge points, breaking down those walls of limitation, cutting through the abandoned island of isolation, chopping off miseducation's ugly head, instead polishing our senses in this place where they keep us for mass census. Those wild infected dogs have become like the sensei, the seeing eyes of the blind, guiding through the darkness of ignorance. Are these tools left on these shelves they call cells worthless? They can't hide our value or take away our usefulness. In a place of physically limited effectiveness, influence can't be restrained, no matter how long they prolong insane. Through flexing the brain, we can't be contained when we release our potential. And this I wrote because a lot of these guys would give up in the future when they see that they've been denied by the courts and that it's been years, 20, 25 years, 30 years, and they have no hope of ever getting out. I said, doesn't matter. Even here in prison, we can still do something. We can still influence some of these young minds. We can still help some of these young guys who will get back out on the street. Look at it like if it was your kid. If you had a son and he came to prison, you would want to help him. You would want him to get out of here, do right, and so you could be proud of him. That's why I wrote this poem, because I said, these guys need this. They need to know that they can still do something with their lives. They still got usefulness. Michelle, this other one that
gave you a purpose in your life. Yeah. But how did it make your life, like actually in DCI, better? Or how did it affect your life inside as a prisoner?
Well, it affected my life in many ways, because I became an example. I became a leader as far as writing, because everybody in my dorm, in my wing that slept there, there's like 75, 80 guys that sleep in the same enclosure. You know, we all have our beds in there, we all have our cell doors, but we have to, hang out in the hallway and go to the same TV room, and everybody in there basically knows each other and knows what everybody else is doing, and everybody knows, what everybody's up to. So they knew that I was a writer. they knew that I was about, you know, education. And a lot of these guys, you know, would joke and stuff. But when it came time to it, a lot of them liked, you know, going to the, like you said, the poetry competition, and they would ask, oh, when are you guys gonna do it, and who's gonna win it this time? So they started getting interested in this, which is something that, you know, is not very interesting in prison. You know, guys don't want to sit around and write. Guys don't want to write poetry. But once you get the taste of it, and you got some guys that are examples, and you got some guys that are doing it in their time, and they're not afraid of sharing with others, it starts affecting other people in prison. And that's so important, because going back to what I said, a lot of these guys have a lot of time, and we don't need to keep, you know, reinforcing to the officers and society that we're violent animals. We don't need that, you know. So therefore, we need to spend more time in this education. We need to spend more time in school. And that's something that these guys have chosen. And Chris has. Chris has chosen the law library. He's chosen to write. He's chosen to educate himself, to grow, you know, something we didn't do while we were out here on the street. But now and there, we want to do it because we know the power behind it. There's so much power in our words when we write, and there's so much power as our lives change and are being changed and transformed from being these delinquents and these convicts to actually becoming successful published writers. We aim for that in there. You know, Dante and Chris and these other guys and Waldo, we're all like, man, who's gonna get published first? You know, who's gonna get an article somewhere? You know, in Newsweek, the Pen magazine or something. You know, we strive for that now, and we became examples, and we became leaders, and I'm thankful to God for that opportunity, and that I was able to grow in there, to grow in prison and pick up, you know, writing, because it's something I do now. You know, I've been out, going on 4 weeks now, and my family calls and, what are you doing? I'm here sitting at my desk, I'm writing, or I'm looking up something, or I'm reading something. And it's something that I still do to this day, you know, because once I picked it up, I fell in love with it. And I appreciate you guys that are writing these other guys in prison, because like I said, a lot of them, you know, need this. A lot of them need to hear your words, because it's like, we don't want to hear the guys in there. We want to hear your perspective. We want to hear what you think. We want to hear, you know, what these young minds are processing, your philosophy, what you believe, what you see. So it's important to us, because sometimes we'll even talk about it. Look at what my writing partner said right here, man. You see this right here? You see what this person said and wrote? And it's happened to us in the class, that we've been like, man, I appreciate and I'm thankful that I write this person because of what this person has wrote right here. And that's what happens in the class. You know, at first we're like, oh, I don't want to write these guys. They don't know me. I'm never going to know them. I'm never going to see them. But as you continue and as those exchanges go back and forth, and some of these guys will share a lot, and some of them might not, but it's just because they're struggling. And a lot of these guys, like I said, don't have a lot of education. You know, some of them do and some of them don't.